Pictures of an A330 Airbus. To my untrained eye, it looks like a pretty big aeroplane. I don't know if that is the case, but if that has ditched, and obviously we say that is a big if, what would actually be visible, do you think, in the sea? Are these aeroplanes designed to have bits of them which essentially float on the water?
If the aeroplane ditched, yes, it is a big aeroplane. I mean, it's approximately 60 metres wingspan, so it's just a little smaller than a 747. So it is quite a it is a very large, wide-bodied aeroplane. What would happen in a ditching, as you saw in the New York accident recently, is it's likely that the engines would detach, and it could well float if it was ditched properly. It could well float for a considerable period of time. The way that they will find the aeroplane could well be through the transmitters mounted in the black boxes, as you call them, so that they can search and locate. Those, when they get wet, will effectively start to transmit, or when they get shaken around enough to start the transmission systems, then they will broadcast signals which can be read from aeroplanes flying close by, or from Navy ships. They can also detect the signals that are sent out, so they can locate the black boxes, and from there they will locate the rest of the wreckage.
We were talking just a few moments ago to Chris Yates, an aviation expert, who was making the point that if this plane has ditched, he felt it would be unlikely that people would survive. For those of us who sit on planes regularly to go on holiday, we're told about the inflatable chutes, and we're told there are life jackets under our seats and so on. In a sense, is that more to reassure us than to prove much practical help?
Well, I think that there's always been this theory that in any accident your fate is in your own hands, or it's too late, there's nothing you can do about it. That really is incorrect. There's a very high survival chance of a lot of types of accidents that aeroplanes have, which is why the safety briefing is given. And I think that a lot of people decided that any ditching was going to be completely fatal. Well, as you saw in New York recently, with an unplanned ditching with only a couple of minutes' notice, they managed to get everybody out of the aeroplane. Now, the subsequent rescue, having got people out, you now need to collect those people and get them to land, which is considerably more difficult in the South Atlantic than it is, obviously, in busy central New York. So I think that there's enough history to be able to say that aeroplanes can survive ditching successfully, and therefore people really should pay some significant degree of attention to the safety briefings. OK, that is a piece of good news there, we hope. David Gleave, thank you very much.
Actually go off radar, given obviously that it has. What are the options that we are looking at?
Well, I can't really add all that much to what David Gleave has been saying, because it's so soon and we really don't know what's happened. However, I think the point about the radar is that there is no radar coverage over the big oceanic areas, and this aircraft had a long oceanic track to go through. And what happens there is that once you go out of the radar cover, which, as David suggested, might be as much as 300 miles from the coast, but may not be that far, they're then under a sort of procedure where they talk to the Oceanic Air Traffic Control Centre, and they report their position every half hour, either by high-frequency radio or sometimes by satellite links. But they're not on any radar. Of course, that route may have taken them along the coast of Brazil for some part, and it may have been on radar at the time. But I'm inclined to think that this phrase, "it dropped off radar," is a bit of a journalistic cliché. If they were actually out well over the ocean, that would not have been the case.
But for Air France to give the details that they have, to set up a reception centre, obviously that is not the only option, that they've simply gone out of range. Given what you've just said and the fact that they're supposed to have made radio contact, how quickly can they establish if the plane has actually gone down through other ways, like the satellite we were just hearing from a moment ago?
Well, if the aircraft has gone down, it isn't only the emergency transmitters in the black boxes. Of course, also if people have taken to the life rafts or activated some of the life jacket emergency radios, then they will be picked up by satellites. But I think we might have heard if that had happened, because that would give a much clearer idea of whether the aircraft actually had ditched or not. I think David Gleave was making the point that it is now getting to the stage where it would almost certainly be out of fuel, and it is classed as overdue. And of course, I think we can probably say that it hadn't got to any of the land on this side of the Atlantic. Otherwise, the air traffic control authorities would have known about it there. So the fact that we don't seem to know anything suggests bad news. But I also go along with what David Gleave was saying, in that a few months ago there hadn't really been any really successful ditchings, but of course the New York one showed that it can be done. Sure. Bearing in mind, though, that they were landing on more or less calm, coming down on more or less calm water. The waters of the Atlantic may well be something very different. Sure.
The briefest of final points, if you would, if that's the realm that we find ourselves in. If you ditch, what would be the altitude that the plane is actually coming down from in an instance like this far into an actual journey?
Oh, they would be at their cruising altitude, between 30 and 38,000 feet probably. But of course, we've no idea what went wrong. If and I've no particular reason for saying this, but if it were a bomb, then the aeroplane is probably destroyed. If it had a total engine failure of some sort, which is vanishingly rare these days, and it was able to glide, which is what happened in New York, then it would just glide down as far as it could. They would glide towards the coast if they still had control, and when they got to the surface of the sea, they would alight on it. I think is the proper word, if they possibly could. But we just don't know.
Okay, well, Sean Maffett, thanks very much for talking to us.